Rahubat. And Rahubat to our Muspatu, or what we would say Nuwaupu, Yasar, our Nuwaupian family out there. For those who don't know me, my name is Peti Sina Tebtu Re'e, and I've been a 30-year student teacher of the profound doctrine of the master teacher, known to us as Panabab Yinanan, also known to us as Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, who has been teaching us Black history, Black culture, African spirituality now for a half a century. And myself, who's been a student teacher of the master teacher now for, as I said, 30 years, we have dedicated ourselves to teaching our people this vital information, which we call the right knowledge, which we call Nuwaupu, which stands for, or which means one has the ability of sound right reasoning. And we say that in order to get the ability of sound right reasoning, you have to have the right knowledge. And that right knowledge leads to one having the right wisdom. And once you have the right wisdom, you have the right understanding. And this is the ultimate goal of every Nuwaupian, every Sabian, those who study our doctrine. And the reason why we say this is because of the conditions that we see Black people are in around the world is due to their reasonability. They do not reason soundly. And that is the cause, we argue, why we are in such a low conditions around the planet. So as students of the master teacher, we've dedicated ourselves, our lives, our time towards teaching our people the right knowledge that will lead to them having, once again, the ability of sound right reasoning, as our ancient ancestors used to have. We identify with our ancestors in ancient Egypt, what people call it. Some call it Kemet. We identify as Mahmat, and ancient Samaria as well, where our people had a high level of reasonability that we as Black people around the planet have gotten away from. And this is what we're dedicated to. Now, I want to say this. I know we haven't been on the air for some time. Wow, it's been, for those who've been following us,
It's been about 4 months.
Yeah, it's been about 4 months that we've been out, and we have a lot of data that we want to get out there to the public. So for those who've been following us, one, we want to thank you guys for your support. And for those who are new to us, definitely thumbs up. We ask everyone, thumbs up. That helps us out. Subscribe, right? Share our videos. Support what we're doing, because I'm the director of our project, which is NoopooH.org, as well as NoopooCC.com. NoopooCC.com is our own social engine, similar to what Facebook is doing. We're dedicated to wanting to create a social network where Black people around the globe can begin to network with each other, and based on economics, based on social issues, based on education, for the betterment of our people, to begin to raise our conditions. So this is what we're dedicated to, and we ask everyone to become a member and support what we're doing with this particular project. And let me just say this, it's a fee-based project. Unlike Facebook, we don't have millions of dollars. So for those who are able to support us and help us grow, it's going to be a benefit for everyone. So I just want to make that clear. Become members of NoopooCC.com. So again, yes, wow, this discussion that we're here to talk about is called, what is the SMAT circle? What is the SMAT circle? Now this is going to be a series of lectures that we're going to do on this subject matter. It's basically going to focus on 4 parts. So this is part 1 of a 4-part series of discussions that we're going to have talking about what the SMAT circle is. Okay? And this is a teachings that the master teacher, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, has introduced us as far back as 1970s, when he put out a series of books called The 9 Ball, right? Get from behind the 9 Ball, something like that. We'll put it up so you guys can see the 9 Ball series. And when you read the 9 Ball series, I know in particular, it was 4 counts, part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. And when you look at parts 3 In part 4, we go into the SMAT circle. I know 3 and 4 talks about it. I'm not sure if parts 1 and 2 go.
Part 1 and 2 do touch on it in terms of the ethers. Because remember, count 1 is all about 9 ether, count 2 is all about 6 ether.
Okay.
So in essence, he's introducing the basis.
Yeah, the whole series is really about the SMAT circle, be honest with you. And so this was the original teachings that the master teacher came to teach us way back in the 60s, right? In the early 70s, until we morphed from teaching right knowledge, Nuwaupu, Sabat, to teaching Islam in its pure, pristine purity, as we say, where we identified ourselves as Ansars, or Ansars pure Sufis, where we were a highly spiritual organization. Our whole focus has always been spiritual development. And we always taught advanced spiritual sciences, unlike anyone else. There's no organization out there that has, no black organization out there in the United States or that I even know around the globe that actually teaches advanced African spiritual sciences that we taught. And so this is what makes us unique. This is what makes us a very profound organization, and unfortunately, it's also one of the reasons why we've been attacked so much, because of how potent and profound our doctrine is. Because all wars, and let me make this clear, all wars around the globe is based on culture. Every war is always based on culture. So whoever has a profound culture, a powerful culture, always will find themselves being attacked. And we're no exception. And African people who know anything about our history know that we've constantly been attacked. And right now, we've become subservient to other people's cultures.
Yeah, worldwide.
Yeah, well.
This is the bad boy here. This was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, Brzezinski. This one does not come from the right. He comes from the left. Remember what I said earlier? Two cousins get to fight, and then both of them get together and agree on their agenda. So this is written in 1995, this book. This is before, I might add, 911. I have to tell you that because you're going to think it came after 911 as soon as you see what he got to say. I also want you to pay attention to what he says about Africa in here, because several of these books mention Africa, but you don't want to know what they say. The formation of a comprehensive integrated Eurasian geostrategy is therefore the purpose of this book. So he wrote a book about how to take over the world. Now, you would think that they would talk about weapons of mass destruction. You know the rule in the world today, the new geopolitical rule that only white people can have weapons of mass destruction. That's the rule. If you haven't, try that out anywhere. See who has them and who doesn't have them, and then see who can get them and who can't get them. And all you have to do is draw a color line. That tells you who can have them. All right? Now, but that's not where the power comes from, according to Brzezinski. Here's where it comes from. Rome's imperial power derived from an important psychological reality. I am a Roman citizen. The exalted status of the Roman citizen was an expression of cultural superiority. That's the key word, cultural superiority. That's how you have power. How you get cultural superiority? Cultural superiority taken for granted by rulers, we know we're superior, conceded by the subjugated. Who's the subjugated? Black folk. You concede, yes, you are superior. And my only job is to get some of that superiority. Just please, Master, let me in your classes so I can learn Russian, so I can learn to speak French, so I can learn to do whatever and whatever. We ain't finished yet. As I said, this is the genius of all of them. Brzezinski says this: the overseas British Empire was initially acquired through a combination of exploration and then trade and then conquest. I might add in that order. But much of its Roman and Chinese predecessors or its French and Spanish rivals, it also derived a great deal of its staying power from the perception of British cultural superiority. That's how they ruled the world. How could you send 1,000 people out and control a continent unless you had something other than guns? You couldn't even shoot at all the people. But if you can control the thinking, cultural superiority successfully asserted, quietly conceded, had the effect of reducing the need to rely on large military forces to maintain the power of the imperial center. That's the advice given to Jimmy Carter now, not to George Bush. Y'all still with me? A mere glance at the map also suggests that control over Eurasia would almost automatically entail Africa's subordination. I'm reading from the lesson plan. That's Brzezinski's lesson plan. A little earlier I was reading from Huntington's lesson plan. A little earlier I was reading from Kotkin's lesson plan. The one thing they all agree, they may disagree on whether there's 5 civilizations or 3, but they don't disagree on domination. And they don't disagree that culture is the way to domination. Now, what are 1 billion Africans supposed to do in a world where the game is cultural integrity? And where there's a culture war on your ability to have cultural integrity. That means awareness and knowledge of self. That people will do whatever they can. They'll shut down every black studies program when it gets to the point that they're producing the information that informs Africans about themselves. Why? Because you want to preempt their capacity to resist when you come for what it is that they have. Right?
So the first thing to changing that is to begin to teach our people their culture so we can get back to living under conditions that benefit us as a people, because right now we're living under conditions that benefit other people. So with all of that being said, when we talk about the SMAT circle, what exactly is the SMAT circle? Now, this is an acronym, so you guys can see an image on the screen we put up of the SMAT circle. And as you can see, it's an acronym, okay? And what it does is the S here stands for space, and then you have the MA, that stands for matter, and then you have the T, and that stands for time.
So space, matter, and time.
That's the explanation of what the acronym actually means. Space, matter, and time. So these are 3 principles of existence. 3 principles of existence. We also call it the universal clock of life. That's another terminology to identify with it. So when you're talking about the SMAT circle, you're talking about the universe. You're talking about the universe. And within the universe is based on space. And then the universe is full of matter. And the universe changes through time. So hence you have space, matter, and time. Okay, so now, with that being said, when we're talking about the SMAT circle, you have to understand our definition of these acronyms. And what do we mean by space? What do we mean by matter? And what do we mean by time? The definition of space when it comes to the SMAT circle is we identify space as the great container of all. It is the great container of all. That's one way we identify it as. We identify it as the unmovable mover. It is the unmovable mover of all. So let me give you an example of what I mean right now. Look at me. I'm sitting in a particular space. I'm occupying a space right now. And in this space, I'm inside of a room. You got all this stuff in this room, right? All this space. that I'm in this particular area. And you watching me, you also are in a particular space. Now here's the thing. The space that you're occupying does not move. The space that you're occupying does not move. It never moves. The only thing that moves is the material or the matter that's occupying the space. So space is unmovable. So for instance, this space that I'm occupying will always be here. But the house that I'm sitting in will not always be here. In fact, this house didn't exist 50 years ago, right? And what was here 50 years ago didn't exist 1,000 years ago. For instance, this house that I'm occupying will not, more than likely, will not exist 1,000 years from today. But the space will always be in this location. The space never moves. It's only the material that occupies the space that moves. And so that's the definition of space in this concept that we're teaching you guys about the SMAT circle.
Can we ask something about that? Because I remember hearing from scientists and studying in class, or if you listen to physicists, they always talk contrary to that by saying space can move, or they'll say like the space-time continuum. How do we rectify that?
Okay, that's...
Yeah.
Forget what you've heard from the Caucasian. From Albert Einstein, all that space-time stuff and space curves and bends and all that, that's absolutely ridiculous. But you're not going to comprehend that it's ridiculous until you get these concepts first. So you first have to get these concepts before what I'm saying begins to make sense, and then you can identify as an actuality. So the first actuality is what I just said. That space, this space, does not move. The only thing that moves is the stuff, the things that occupy the space.
So no space in existence moves.
No space. Space is. Space is space.
Space is endless in all directions, eternal. Never
Space is absolute eternal. It is the unmovable mover of all. Space is what allows everything else to move within it. Okay? So if you think about the concept, you'll see how profound that definition is. It's the unmovable mover of all. It is the great container of all. So that is the definition of space in this concept of the SMAT circle. The next principle within the SMAT circle is called matter. And what is the definition of matter in this principle? The definition of matter is anything and everything that occupies space, whether it's seen or unseen, whether it's microscopic or macroscopic. That is the definition of matter. So let's do it again. The definition of matter is anything and everything that occupies space, whether it's seen or unseen, whether it's macroscopic, which is as big as a sun, or microscopic, as small as a subatomic particle. Okay? That is the definition of matter in this concept.
Okay, so again, just to clarify for most people who've heard or studied science before, a lot of times we'll hear matter in the Western science is separated from energy.
That's right.
Saying that that's not true when it comes to
That's
nature.
absolute silliness. That's absolute silliness.
They try to teach energy and matter.
Let me say this. Let me just say this. Here's the problem with this. Because when you get into scientific concepts and scientific thought, this people, you got to realize that the European science, they got that from Africans. Okay? European science, they got it from Africans. How do you know that's an actual fact? Well, the father of modern day science is a guy by the name they credit as Francis Bacon. Okay? Francis Bacon, look him up. In the 1500s. In fact, he is supposedly responsible for the what we got?
They put out the Bible,
the King
right?
James Version of the Bible. Okay? Francis Bacon is supposedly responsible for translating for King James the Bible. It's up for debate, but whatever. Point being is that he is credited with being the father of the modern scientific theories. Okay, so from Francis Bacon, then you have a whole string of scientists that come under his string, his
Isaac
school of
Newton
thought.
and all of them.
Yes, because this created what they call the Royal Society coming out of Europe. Blah 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 blah. My point is this: these guys, if you research them, they got their information from the Moors. They got their information from the Moors. It's just a fact. I mean, we know like algebra and chemistry.
They do teach all of that, yeah.
Yeah, algebra, chemistry, and geometry, all this stuff they learned from the Moors when they were in Spain. So a lot of this so-called scientific thought, again, was coming from Africans, and Arab, what they call Arabs, you know, the Asiatic Arabs, whatever. So when the Arabs and the Africans were ruling Spain and Portugal, they had great universities and they was teaching these sciences, okay? And these sciences of algebra and chemistry goes back to ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt, what people call Egypt, which we identify as Magmat. So my point is this. Just like I always like to use the analogy of the Jackson 5. We had the Jackson 5. The Caucasians come up with the Osmond family. We'll put pictures of them. You got the Jackson 5 here, and then a copy of the Jackson 5 would be the Osmond family.
Replica.
Yeah, it's no comparison. When they copy us, it's never the same. Yeah. That's my point. When they copy us, it's never the same.
Loses the flavor, loses the luster.
They can never copy us. No matter how good Eminem is, he can never be better than Biggie Smalls and Tupac and a slew of other rappers out there. Yes, they can copy us, but when they copy us, it's never the same. So I want to put that as food for thought. Yes, there's a lot of concepts that the Europeans did get from us when it comes to scientific thought, but look what they've done with their science.
They use it for destruction.
That's all they do. They use their science and what they so-called learn about nature as a tool to control and rule people and destroy the earth. And that's what they've done with their science. So they're not really credible people we should be looking at for looking at scientific thought.
Oh, wow. I love this. Now, you also are a master and expert in axiology, the study of human values. You know, we've had Dr. Edwin Nichols on, who's also an axiologist. Walk us through then African psychology, the connection and association of axiology. And if you could, if it wouldn't take too long, because I know you're on a time crunch, but give us the axiological journey and effects of the African, but also that axiological journey of the Eurasian, and how have the two intersected, and how do we start to begin separating ourselves from it?
Yeah, I'm going to try to do this in a simple way. I make the argument that we are Bantu Congo people, and that if you look at the whole continent of Africa, there are 2 or 3, maybe 5 cultural linguistic regions. Mm-hmm. The largest cultural linguistic region is called the Bantu Congo, and that is the region that I say almost 3/4 of all of Africa is that sub-Saharan Africa. And then the transatlantic slave trade essentially transported these Bantu people here. So we come here as Bantu people. So now let's interrogate, what do the Bantu people believe about this notion of axiology, of ontology, of cosmology? Because those are the 3 things that are the grounding of our philosophical worldview. Mm-hmm. And it's captured in a kind of brief statement. The Bantu believe that I am human because I recognize the humanity of others And in recognizing their humanities, I am compelled to respond to them in humane ways. I can't be human without recognizing the humanity. That's an axiological position. The value is that my value of humanity is seeing your value of humanity.
Yes.
And seeing your value as a human being, I am compelled. It's like I don't have a choice. I am compelled to respond to you in humane ways. That eliminates the predisposition to see you as an object of exploitation, because to do so would disqualify myself as a human being. See, that to me, and even though we like to talk about axiology as doing with value systems, we can list out, and I've done this in other places, list out, there are about 54 distinct features of African-American values. So we talk about ontology, and that's to do with the nature of being or essence. We can talk about that in terms of our kinship for spirituality. People say black people are religious, but it really is not that we're religious. We are spirit. And that spirit is our ontological and cosmological format. And so I'd like to just stop with just that one statement. What does it mean to be human? If you can answer that question, then everything else, whether it's axiology, cosmology, psychology, sociology, anthropology, all those things fall into shape once you define what it is to be human. And for the African, to be human is to be spirit. And to be a spirit being housed in a physical container having a human experience. Now let's unpack that. I'm spirit being, I'm energy, I'm power, I'm force, but I'm housed in a physical container. My physical container, i.e. I'm a black man, my physical container was assaulted so that the idea of a black man is demonized. I have a psychological problem now. I'm a spirit housed in a container that has been demonized. And I'm having a human experience, and my human experience has been one that says that everything you do, you are the negation and the nullification of. So you can't have good housing, you can't have good food, you can't have good community, you are the can't people. All right? So here I get my spirit being housed in a container that's been demonized, having a human experience that has been made less than human. That's our challenge as psychologists, is to break us free of that and begin to say, let's say we have to do a realignment. If I am a divine spirit, then my human container has to be held up in high regard and deep respect. And our ancestors did that. When our ancestors were assaulted by white supremacy saying black is negative, black is, we reached down into our metaphorical container and pulled up the statement, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. We confronted, saying, you say our container is bad, but in God's natural world, the things that have color are the things that are most valuable.
That's right.
You don't eat snow. So we were having this sort of contestation of battling with the assault on our container in our experience, and that's ongoing. Not only in the diaspora, it's throughout the African world. You go to Brazil, and they got 18 different terms for different shades of color, because they're trying to figure out, if I can just be beige, I'm better than blue black, and if I can be white, I'm better than beige. So they went through all that stuff. It's all an assault on our consciousness, the shattering of the language I use in the Island of Means is the shattering of consciousness.
So that being said, here's the rub and the argument. So to be human is to be melanated, to be color, to have pigmentation. So the opposite of that, we know about the northern and southern cradle. We know about that journey, that philosophy, that science of how the Eurasians came to be. So then the question is, axiologically, are we dealing with humans? Are we dealing with something else? Are we dealing with, Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene says we're dealing with mutations of a mutation. I read somewhere where you said that, Africans are spiritual beings having a human experience, and Eurasians are humans searching for a spiritual experience. Are we dealing with are we dealing with a mutation of a mutation? Are we dealing with something that has the ability to be humane? Or is this something that is just axiologically not possible for that particular species of people?
I guess I have to apologize. I haven't given a lot of thought to what's their quest. They may be humans seeking an experience, but that's not my assignment. So I haven't given in my earlier life, I sort of try to talk about that, but I have not really given a lot of thought to that. I think that my purpose at this time in life is really to unfold and to elaborate on what it means to be African.
Okay.
And there are some conditionalities that prevent us from being African, and those we have to identify and to eliminate. There is Kwame Nkrumah in his dissertation wrote about this notion of categorical conversions, and he argued that in terms of any phenomena, there's a point where the changes in the phenomena get so extreme that the category itself is changed. And he implied that Africans were the original root, but through mutations and different permutations, the category of Africanness keeps getting less and less and less, to the point that the category has converted to a qualitative difference. There are quantitative changes that end up being a qualitative difference. In that argument, he's arguing that if there's a qualitative difference between the oppressor and the oppressed, then the oppressed cannot petition the oppressor to make changes because they're talking to two different life forms.
Wow.
That's an extreme one there. But
wow.
You see, but and I'm not ready to.
You just said, "Oh, I don't want to talk about this." You just did. That's beautiful.
But I said I don't want to argue about that, because see, then you get in the place of, well, what do we do with them? I'm not concerned with what we do with them. I'm concerned with what we do with ourselves.
I hear you. I hear you.
How do we walk in the world? Because I like what Louis Farrakhan once said, was that when you walk into a dark room and you turn on the light, the dark knows what to do. So I want to turn on the light. If I turn on the light of Africa, European oppression knows what to do. I don't have to figure out all this stuff. You see, so at least that's the choice I have made. I could be wrong, but my choice is try to illuminate and to elevate the sense of being African. In doing that, all that is anti-African will know what to do.
Wow. Wow. Okay, you changed me today, Doc. I love that. That's no, you changed me. That's
what are they, like Dr. Evil?
Yeah.
You give them gunpowder, and what do they create?
Yeah,
a freaking gun.
That's exactly what it is. What Dr. Oppenheimer and them first chance they got creating atomic
They're not,
bombs.
and I know that Don Armour Squad is pushing this ridiculous scientific thought. Those guys are out of their mind. They really don't understand what they're saying. No one should listen to the European when it comes to these concepts. So again, I go back. You have space, matter, and time. Matter is anything and everything that occupies space, whether seen or unseen, right? Macroscopic or microscopic. Subatomic, I don't care how subatomic it can get. If it's a particle, it's matter. Now they're talking about the quantum field force, right? A quantum field force. They said that is what they seen, the subatomic particles are coming out of this field. When you study ancient Egypt, that aligns up with our principle we call Noon, the waters of Noon and Nunet, which was the creative energies, the creative forces, this dark energy that the sun's Atum Re comes out of, this primordial suit, okay? That the Europeans today talk about. Again, you have dark matter, that from dark matter you get dark energy, okay? And that would be synonymous when we teach, or what our ancestors taught as Noon and Nunet. Now keep this in mind. You know our African ancestors had to have an advanced science just because of the pyramids in ancient Egypt and the pyramids in Nubia. These are African developments. So this is what our scientific minds were able to produce, our ancestors, and something we talk about, that we have gotten away from the knowledge of our ancestors and how we did things. And when we did things, it was in harmony with nature, to be at one with nature. So again, the definition of matter is anything and everything that occupies space. Now, the next principle is time. What is the definition of time? In this acronym of the SMAT circle. The definition of time is, we call it the great continuity of all, the great changer of all. So what does that mean?
What does that mean?
That means that the matter that occupies space changes through time. The matter that occupies space will always change through time. Now, this is self-evident.
So we're saying that time is really the rate of change of matter within
Time
space.
is the rate of change of matter within space. That is what time is, not the
clock
yeah,
ticking, tick, tick, tick,
no.
tick. I'm like, yeah.
No, that has nothing to do with time. The concept of time is how matter changes based within nature, based on the cycle and season of the matter occupying that particular location.
So could we say when you have winter time and all the leaves will fall off, the same branches are there and then new leaves and flowers begin to bud? That's matter changing.
Matter changing, and that's over a process of time. So if you take an apple and you just let it sit out, over time the matter in that apple is going to decompose. So if you take a block of ice, right, and you take it out of a below zero temperature and you put it in temperature above 33 degrees, that matter over a period of time is going to change from now being ice into a liquid, water. And if the temperature continues to rise, that liquid now is also going to change and it's going to turn into a gas. And that's how matter changes through time. And that's how you clock time, matter changing. So, for instance, for you listening and you watching us right now, your parents, your mother conceived you inside her womb. You was just a sperm cell and an egg, right? That's initially what you was. And over time, the matter, the flesh that you're made of, it morphed, it changed, it grew, it developed. And over a period of 9 months, it comes out of the womb. And you're now a baby. And then you watch that baby grow. And that baby grows into a toddler. And then a toddler to an adolescent, and to the adolescent to a young teenager, to a young teenager to a young adult, from a young adult to a grown woman or a grown man. And from a grown woman into a grown man, you become an elder. Moving into senior citizen, into old age, and back into the realm of the dead, where you're laying down dead in a coffin. And over time, that body that you was made of is going to deteriorate and recycle itself right back into the earth. All of that happens over a period of time. And that is time. And the great, what we call the universal clock of existence, called the SMAT circle. Now, for those who follow us, who follow the master teacher and these teachings, it's a couple of things I want you guys to refer to, or I want to refer you to. It's a book we put out. We put out a bunch of books on this stuff. Because the first book I talked about was the 9-ball, right? And that was way back.
1971.
Yeah. But the master's also putting this stuff out in the actual fact. So if you look at the book, actual fact number 240, and we'll put that on the screen for you guys. It's called The Cycles. That book goes into these concepts about the cycles of nature. Okay? There's another book we put out, Actual Facts number 13. Now, if you look through that particular book, you'll see that we have imagery of the SMAT circle. In fact, if you go to page 4, and you guys can see it there, this is a breakdown of the SMAT circle itself. And so if you go from page 4 and you're looking at page 5, you move over to, let's see, page 8 now. And page 8 has a good representation of the SMAT circle. Okay? So now, in studying the SMAT circle and beginning to comprehend the SMAT circle, there's some key words you have to learn. Word number 1 is ether. What is ether? ether. You must learn what the word ether is. Word number 2 that you have to learn. Matrix. What is a matrix? That's word number 2. Word number 3 you need to learn. Morphic resonance. And you see these words, you guys see these words as I'm saying it. So again, ether, then you have matrix, and then you have morphic resonance. Those are very important words to comprehend when you're studying the SMAT circle and trying to comprehend these concepts that we've been teaching. Okay? So the SMAT circle, as you can see, is broken up. It's a circle, and you see some digits there.
Yeah, it looks somewhat similar to a regular clock.
Yes.
Broken up into 12 equal parts, segments.
Yes. So you have, it starts 3 on the bottom, 9 on top. And if you notice, it goes from 3, if you look at 3 on the bottom, and you move to the right, and it goes from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, 7, 8, and 9. You see that. And then it goes down from 9 at the top, and it drops down to 8, to 7, to 6, to 5, 4, and back to 3.
Moving counterclockwise, opposite to what we got in the Western
That
culture.
is a representation of how the universe is turning. That is a representation of how the universe is turning, and a representation of how the material, the matter within the universe changes through time. Okay? So each number that you're looking at represents the energies we call ether. The energies we call ether. So there was a book we put out that's called Existence, How and Why. This is Actual Facts number 36. You guys can see that on the screen. And if you go to page 20, it talks about how universes are born. Okay? On page 20. And if you also go to the book called The Cycles, and I think that particular book, right in page 1, it also talks about the birth of universe. Starts with a black dot. Everyone hears about this black dot.
Yeah, the black dot. They talk about that a lot.
Yes, and so these particular books goes into that particular explanation. So for those of you guys who have access to these particular actual facts, I recommend getting it. There's another actual fact we put out, and this is actual fact. You guys will see it on the screen. It's called 108. And this is called the proof. The proof. And if you go to page, let's see, the proof, page 10. And on page 10, paragraph 9, it talks about the SMAT circle. The space, matter, and time. SMAT circle. And it's talking about how our ancestors compare that to the waters of Nu. So in that particular book, it goes into it. And so it is imperative that you understand this concept we call ether. Okay? It is imperative. Now, let me just say this. When we're talking about ether, ether is the actual energy that grows the universe. I repeat, ether is the energy that grows the universe. In fact, everything in existence, all matter is made up of ether. All matter is made up of ether. The only difference between the ether of any particular material is its vibration and frequency and potency, right? And that's where we determine something being 3 ether, 4 ether, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 9. 9 is the most potent ether gas in existence, because ether is a gas. Ether is a gas, and it is the most potent force in all of existence. 9 ether. In fact, 9 ether is what grows the universe. So when the scientists are talking about the Big Bang, right, that is the birth of the universe. And the birth of the universe is how can I say, is triggered by a nine-ether force. That's what triggers the birth of the universe.
So we're saying it's the ether itself that's moving, controlling, and birthing everything in existence in the universe.
Everything in existence is made up of nine-ether, which is what the suns of the universe are all made up of.
Tonight, I'd like to tell you about one of the big questions in science. It's a question that goes back at least 2,500 years to the ancient Greeks, and it's a question that has been discussed in this room many, many times over the past 200 years, but it's an important question, and I think it's important that we revisit it. And the question is simply this: it's, what are we made of? What are the fundamental building blocks of nature that you and me and everything else in the universe are constructed from? That's the story I'd like to tell you. The spirit is exactly what Democritus said 2,500 years ago. It's that there are like Lego bricks from which everything in the world is constructed. These Lego bricks are particles, and the particles are the electron and two quarks. It's a very nice picture. It's a very comforting picture. It's the picture we teach kids at school. It's the picture we even teach our students in undergraduate university. And there's a problem with it. The problem is, it's a lie. It's a white lie. It's a white lie that we tell our children because, we don't want to expose them to the difficult and horrible truth too early on. It makes it easier to learn if you believe that these particles are the fundamental building blocks of the universe. But it's simply not true. The best theories that we have of physics do not have underlying them the quark particle and the two quark particle, and the electron particle and the two quark particles. In fact, the very best theories we have of physics don't rely on particles at all. The best theories we have tell us that the fundamental building blocks of nature are not particles, but something much more nebulous and abstract. The fundamental building blocks of nature are fluid-like substances which are spread throughout the entire universe and ripple in strange and interesting ways. Okay? That's the fundamental reality in which we live. These fluid-like substances we have a name for. We call them fields. So this is a picture of a field. This isn't the kind of field that physicists have in mind. This is what you think a field is if you're a farmer, or if you're a normal person. If you're a physicist, you have a very different picture in your mind when you think about fields. And I'll tell you the general definition of a field, and then we'll go through some examples so that you get familiar with this. The physicist's definition of a field is the following. It's something that, as I said, is spread everywhere throughout the universe. It's something that takes a particular value at every point in space, and what's more, that value can change in time. Okay, so the picture to have in your mind is a fluid which ripples and sways throughout the universe. Now, it's not a new idea. It's not an idea that we've just come up with. It's an idea which dates back almost 200 years, and like so many other things in science, it's an idea which originated in this very room. Because, as I'm sure many of you are aware, this is the home of Michael Faraday. And Michael Faraday initiated this lecture series in 1825. He gave over 100 of these Friday evening discourses, and the vast majority of these were on his own discoveries on the experiments he did on electricity and magnetism. So he did many, many things in electricity and magnetism over many decades. And in doing so, he built up an intuition for how electric and magnetic phenomena work. And the intuition is what we now call the electric and magnetic field. So what he envisaged was that threaded everywhere throughout space were these invisible objects called the electric and magnetic fields. Now, we learn this in school. Again, it's something that we sort of take for granted because we learn it at an early age and we don't sort of appreciate just how big of a radical step this idea of Faraday's is. I want to stress, it's one of the most revolutionary abstract ideas in the history of science, that these electric and magnetic fields exist. So let me just, you're supposed to do demonstrations in this, and I'm not just a theoretical physicist, I'm a very theoretical physicist. It's very hard for me to do any kind of experiment that's going to work, but I'm just going to show you something that you've all seen. They're magnets, okay? And we all played these games when we were kids or when we were in school. You take these magnets and you move them together, and as they get closer and closer, there's this force that you can sort of just feel building up that pushes, the pressure that pushes against these two magnets. And it doesn't matter how often you do it, and it doesn't matter how many degrees you have in physics, it's just a little bit magical. And you all know this. There's something just special about this weird feeling that you get between magnets. And this was Faraday's genius. It was to appreciate that even though you can't see anything in between, even though no matter how closely you look, the space between these magnets will seem to be empty, he said, nonetheless, there's something real there. There's something real and physical which is invisible but is building up, and that's what's responsible for the force. So he called them lines of force. We now call it the magnetic field.
Now, I also want to refer you guys to books we put out that deals with ether. Okay, so these are some actual facts that we have that talks about ether. What is the name? Natural ether energy. Yeah, we have quite a few books that deals with it. So I highly recommend you guys to look into that. Now, that's something that the European scientific community have been having a problem with. Now they've gotten to the point of acknowledging what they call the quantum field force, which is really ether. They call it the quantum field force, but it's ether, with which they admit now the particles of existence are coming up out of this field, this energy field, which is ether. And I'm like, they don't want to admit it, but it is what it is. It don't really matter. You do have some scientists that do acknowledge the ether. Now, but here's the key to ether. It's conscious. It's a conscious gas. It's a conscious gas.
You're saying this energy is actually thinking and making decisions and reasoning.
We're all made up of it. Every species in existence is made up of this ether energy. The only difference from one species to another is the quality of the ether. And the quality of the ether is determined on the cycle and the season that you came into existence. Because everything in existence was birthed by way of the suns of the universe. The suns of the universe are the mothers and fathers of all creation. I repeat that again. The sons of the universe are the mothers and fathers of all creation.
The mothers and fathers, well, we use that term.
They are the parents of all creation throughout the balanced multiverse, omniverse.
Using that kind of term would put people in a state that we actually descend from them. That was
everything descended. Carl Sagan said it. Carl Sagan, he's one of the Europeans' famous scientists who admit that everything comes from the sun. It's an actual fact.
The lives and deaths of the stars seem impossibly remote from human experience, and yet we're related in the most intimate way to their life cycles. The very matter that makes us up was generated long ago and far away in red giant stars. A blade of grass, as Walt Whitman said, is the journey work of the stars. The formation of the solar system may have been triggered by a nearby supernova explosion. After the sun turned on, its ultraviolet light poured into our atmosphere, its warmth generated lightning, and these energy sources sparked the origin of life. Plants harvest sunlight, converting solar into chemical energy. We and the other animals are parasites on the plants, so we are, all of us, solar powered. The evolution of life is driven by mutations. They're caused partly by natural radioactivity and cosmic rays, but they are both generated in the spectacular deaths of massive stars thousands of light years distant. Think of the sun's heat on your upturned face on a cloudless summer's day. From 150 million kilometers away, we recognize its power. What would we feel on its seething, self-luminous surface or immersed in its heart of nuclear fire? And yet, the sun is an ordinary, even a mediocre star. Our ancestors worshiped the sun, and they were far from foolish. It makes good sense to revere the sun and the stars, because we are their children. We have witnessed the life cycles of the stars. They are born, they mature, and then they die. As time goes on, there are more white dwarfs, more neutron stars, more black holes. The remains of the stars accumulate as the eons pass. But interstellar space also becomes progressively enriched in heavy elements, out of which form new generations of stars and planets, life and intelligence. The events in one star can influence a world halfway across the galaxy and 1 billion years in the future.
Everything comes from the sun. We're all made of the same molecular structures that break down into atoms, that break down into protons, neutrons, and electrons. Everything does. So what is the differences? The difference is the vibrations and frequencies of that particular material. And that's relative to the cycle and season when something was birthed. Okay, so if something was birthed with primary creation, when the universe was first created, that would have a certain type of ether signature or energy signature. If something came when the universe was birthed, when the universe was about to die, then I would have a different type of ether signature.
Okay, you just said the universe dying?
The universe is born, grown, mature, gets old, and dies like everything in existence. Scientists all know this. This is all scientific facts. Anyone who studies this type of information. So the concept of some unseen God and some,
or even from the popular scientific community, they talk about it like it's some abstract thing that just
because they don't want to acknowledge that existence is consciousness. All of existence is consciousness. This quantum field force that they're talking about is consciousness. Now they tap into it when they expose what is known as the double split theory, a double split experiment, right? Where they have acknowledged and admit that particles are affected by the mind of the observer, meaning that your mind can influence subatomic particles. Okay? And if you research quantum entanglement, so you have the double slit experiment, right? And I think we've talked about that before in our lectures.
Matter of fact, we'll play it.
Okay? And then you have quantum entanglement. Okay? So it's acknowledging, what is it acknowledging? That the mind, the observer, the scientist who does these experiments can influence particles, right? So that's a sign that particles are conscious. Now think about this. What is the mind? That's the ultimate question to ask yourself. What is the mind? The mind is nothing but subatomic particles. That's what the mind is. So when you take an MRI and they take an image of your brain, they are registering brain synapses or electrical impulses in the brain that how can I say, allows them to know what you're thinking.
Yeah, you see that little something that looks like a lightning bolt running through your brain.
It's electrical signals. So what is the electron? The electron is a gas particle. It is a gas subatomic particle. And where does the electron come from? This quantum field force. What is the quantum field force? Ether. So again, ether is consciousness. Okay? Ether is conscious.
Minas, you believe that consciousness is really fundamental in reality, and on Mondays and Tuesdays, I think the same. Wednesdays and Thursdays, I'm not so sure. But how do you relate consciousness to the cosmos? Did consciousness cause the cosmos? Or are the two elements operating in parallel?
Does the consciousness cause the cosmos? That's the question. The answer would be the consciousness is the cosmos. It causes the cosmos. In the same way that the mind and the body are interrelated. You can't have a mind without a body. You can't have a body without a mind. So, taking this analogy, the universe or the cosmos, it will be like the body of the consciousness. And the consciousness is what drives the whole thing. Our mind drives our body.
So you have the cosmos and consciousness being the same thing. It's not that consciousness is causing the cosmos.
They're the dual aspects. They're the complementary aspects. But in a fundamental way, the universe can go away and consciousness is still there.
Okay, but the consciousness cannot go away, and the universe can still be there.
No, because then it would be a dead universe. And if such a universe exists, as perhaps some people say in the multiverse, it's an irrelevant universe as far as I'm concerned.
The nature of consciousness is such that most neuroscientists say it's a product of the brain, and the brain is an accident of evolution, and consciousness is therefore something wonderful that we enjoy, but it's really an accident that appears on planet Earth during this period of time.
And it is a belief system. I have to say that viewpoint that you just very profoundly put together, which is belief system of neuroscience, it's a belief system. There's actually no way of proving that a priori and in a self-consistent way. It is a viewpoint. Now, the reason that I don't prescribe to it is because we know that the mind is not localized in the brain. If you open the brain, you don't find a particular location that says, mind is right here. It's not. It's non-local. To use a simple analogy, it is a saying that, well, if you open the TV and you look at the integrated circuit, you're going to find the CNN program that you're watching that evening or whatever your favorite program is. No, that program is somewhere else. It is like the software versus the hardware. Just because you understand the hardware, it doesn't mean you understand the software. The hardware of a computer can support many different softwares, but it's not causing the software.
Okay. Let's get back to your fundamental point that consciousness is fundamental. I want to understand how that consciousness that you think is fundamental relates to the physical cosmos. You say that they are the expressions of the same thing, but that the universe cannot exist without the consciousness, yet the consciousness can exist without the universe. So that means they're not the same thing.
The universe can exist only because consciousness is the underlying reality. Okay? Now, this particular universe could go away. When we say the universe, this particular universe that we happily live in and live our lives, etc., can go away. Consciousness will still be there. It will create or give rise to other universes.
But could consciousness, in your way of thinking about it, exist by itself even without a universe? Any universe?
So let's bring it back to an individual person. The question that you're asking at the cosmic level, I would turn it around and say, can you exist? Can the mind exist in a state without thoughts? And the answer is yes. We have some deep states in meditation or altered states, etc., where the mind, as we experience in everyday life, stops or slows down. But consciousness is still there. Why is it still there? Because we remember. We come out of it and say, oh yeah, I had a good experience. I had a deep experience. So there's something there, even when the mind slows down in terms of thoughts. So that analogy, I would say, the universe can go away. The objects, the universe being the objects, can go away. But the awareness is still there. Consciousness is still there.
And so this goes into a very advanced subject matter. That's why I said this is just part 1 of 4 lectures we're going to do on this subject matter. Because the next lecture we're going to focus on what is 9 ether. The third lecture we're going to focus on what is 6 ether. And the last lecture we're going to do on this subject matter, what is 3 ether. So you have 9 ether, which is a conscious created gas force. You have 6 ether, which is a conscious creative gas force. And you have 3 ether, which is also a conscious creative gas force. Right? And so in comprehending this SMAT circle, you have to understand or comprehend how these forces, these conscious gas forces, influence and dictate existence itself. And all of this, here's the key, all of this is emanated by way of the sons of the universe.
All the different ethers of gas.
All of these ethers is the sons of the universe emanate ether. So what you call sunshine is nothing but ether. That's all it is. And so the sun has a potent state where it can emit 9 ether energy, and it has a weak state when it can emit 6 ether energy. 9 ether energy represents life, and 6 ether energy represents death. Now repeat that. 9 ether energy represents life, and 6 ether energy represents death. Now I will refer people to a book we put out, which is Actual Facts number 9. You can see that on the screen. It's called Genetic Kiss. And if you go to page, let's see, this page 21, and you have an image here, you can see the image of the SMAT circle. And in the SMAT circle, you have on the top half called the mind, and on the bottom half called sex. The top half represents the universe in its life cycle. The bottom half represents the universe in its death cycle. And that is where humanity, in this universe we're in right now, we're in the death cycle. In fact, we're in the cycle of 3 ether, moving into 9 ether once again, the cycle of the dead. And so this is why there's so much chaos and death and destruction on the planet. And this is going on throughout the universe, because that death energy is dictated by the sons of the universe based on a cycle and season that we exist in. That's a very complex explanation, which we will get into as we go through these series. But I wanted to introduce you guys to the information, which is why we're talking about it. Now, the other key things that I want to bring up and keep in mind is we talked about, it's important you guys learn about what morphic resonance is. Morphic, listen to the word resonant. Morph is to change. Resonant means frequency, tones, vibrations. Okay? So what that word is trying to say is that through frequencies, tones, and vibrations, things morph, things change based on its frequency, its tone, and its vibration. And that's how the universe creates. That's how the universe comes into existence, because everything is based on tone, frequency, and vibration. Everything that has life moves, it vibrates.
And we say it creates a tone.
If it's vibrating, it produces a tone. And if it produces a tone, it has a morphic resonance. It has a morph, meaning it has a structure. And whatever that structure is, that's called its matrix. That's called its matrix. Like, now we put out a book, Actual Facts number 19. And if you go to page, let's see, page number 9, you see the female says the matrix of the female chromosome, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and we have the matrix, and you guys can see that. And we have the breakdown of the matrix of the female. Everything in creation is made up of its morphic resonance. And once it has a morphic resonance, that is its matrix.
Morphic resonance is a connection across time from the past to the present. And it's a process that occurs between organized patterns of activity on the basis of similarity. What it means, in effect, is that each species has a kind of collective memory. So every giraffe tunes in by morphic resonance to the form and to the behavior of previous giraffes. Every crystal, as it crystallizes, tunes in to the way that previous crystals of the same chemical crystallized in the past. So there's a kind of memory given by morphic resonance in all kinds of things. And in the realm of animal behavior, for example, it leads to quite striking predictions. If rats learn a new trick here in London, then rats all around the world should be able to learn the same trick quicker, just because the rats have learned it here. The more that learn it, the easier it should get everywhere else. And there's already evidence that this actually happens from studies of rats in laboratories. When lots of rats have learned something, other rats all around the world find it easier to learn. And this doesn't depend on any normal kind of connection between the different rats or the places. It happens because of morphic resonance on the basis of similarity. The same applies to crystals. When a new chemical is made for the first time, it's usually very hard to crystallize it. And as time goes on, it gets easier to crystallize all around the world. And I think the reason for this is that morphic resonance connects up the crystals so they tune into a kind of collective memory. So morphic resonance works through morphic fields, the organizing fields of chemicals and biological systems. And the word morphic comes from the Greek word for form. So it's a kind of resonance to do with form, pattern, and organization.
So whenever you look at any species, a giraffe, a cow, a whale, a shark, a turtle, an ant, a spider, each species within nature has a morphic resonance. It has a vibration, a tone.
A natural original tone.
A natural original tone for that species. And that species is its matrix. That's why it's able to reproduce of its kind, because it has the same matrix. And that's why every species is able to reproduce its kind, because it has the same genetic matrix, which is based on a morphic resonance, a frequency, a tone, a vibration. This is how the universe creates.
So we're saying every species has a tone or morphic resonance, a frequency that it's made up of. And that personifies into a structure that we call a matrix, like a black print for the species.
That's right.
And then it will personify from that, the matrix.
That's right. That's right. And every species that comes into existence is conscious. I repeat that. Every species that comes into existence is conscious, including plant life. Plant life is also conscious.
Definitely not going to hear that in Western science.
No, because this is African science. This is what our ancestors always taught. That's why we were in harmony with nature, not adverse to nature. When you have a species like the Caucasian who's ruling the planet, who's destroying the planet, you can clearly see that that's a species that's not in harmony with nature. So they don't have a how can I say, they can't feel the harmony of existence. They don't have the morphic resonance to tap into it. And that's what we identify as soul. The soul force, soul, S-O-U-L, is really also S-O-L, which is really S-U-N. Soul, which really comes from sun, the original created sun force that the African woman and the African man grew with. We come out of our essence. Our matrix, our original morphic resonance is of 9 ether. And so we're in harmony with these tones and vibrations and frequencies. That's why we dance so well. That's why we sing so well. That's why we're so good in athletics, because we're able to move like no other human on earth. We have a connection to existence that no one else has. And you lose that connection every time you mix in. That's why we put out the book, Genetic Kiss. Every time you mix your bloodline, you alter your matrix.
That sounds like what we put out in that video on spirit being possession. How we have our original spirit that comes with the original matrix, original way of doing things. And when you start altering it, you start changing and altering the behavior.
When you start mixing in with other morphic resonance, you blend your morphic resonance with the morphic resonance of another species, and you create something else, a hybrid that becomes less than the original. And that's what cuts you off. And that's how we, as African people, got cut off from our original ancient sciences, because of mixing in. It goes back to the Bible, Genesis chapter 6. Read Genesis chapter 6. And this is what our doctrine has been dedicated to teaching. How we got cut off from our original culture. How we got cut off from doing that which we naturally did by nature. And how did we allow a species like the Caucasian to outsmart us and conquer the planet? Because we've lost our natural connection to existence. And that's why we're being outsmart today. And it all starts with culture. Culture is the first step towards getting back to your original tone. And when you introduce culture, the first thing you introduce with culture is language. Language, the tones that you speak. The language you speak, it morphs your physical body. English is a morphic resonance. It produces a tone, a frequency. And all frequencies shape the structure that produces that tone. That's why the Caucasian is so, the secret societies who know all the science that I'm telling you right now, that's why they're hell-bent on controlling music and movies, industry, and education. Because they know that they can shape and morph a population based on the tones and frequencies that they put out into the atmosphere. That's why people complain about 5G now.
Yeah, because it says it's going to alter everything,
Yeah.
you know, atmospheres,
Yes.
it's deadening thing. I mean, they talked about that just with the cell waves, the cell phone waves,
Yes.
killing the bees.
Yes, this heart thing that people complain about.
Yeah.
They know the science.
Yeah.
It's a real science. And they know that. And that's how they're able to influence. They're literally able to influence brain waves, meaning they can influence the way you think because you don't comprehend morphic resonance. And once you tap into your own morphic resonance, then you can tap into the magnetic field of the planet. And once you can tap into the magnetic field of the planet, you can literally transcend this dimension. You can raise into another dimensional reality.
I.e., you can move about on the SMAT circle.
You can move on the SMAT circle, that's right. You can go from one dimension to another because when you look at, when it says 3 ether, now look at the SMAT circle again. When you see 3, that's a 3-dimensional existence. When you see 4, that's a 4th dimensional existence. 5 and all the way up to 9, a 9-dimensional existence. And all that really means is the vibrations and frequencies of the matter, the material, is vibrating at a higher rate of existence. In order to exist in a universe that's producing that kind of energy, you have to be able to vibrate at that morphic resonance. All African people have the natural nature genetic to be able to vibrate anywhere on the SMAT circle. We're the only people on earth that could do that. And so while other species go extinct as the circle changes, as the SMAT circle goes from time, it changes through time, other species go extinct, we always exist. But we morph, we change as the morphic resonance, as the frequencies, the energies in the universe change. Now scientists, today they call that, they have their nice little word called
We're talking about
natural selection.
Yeah.
Natural selection. What that means is nature selects the survival of the fittest. A species is able to survive, change its genetics through as conditions within nature changes, right? And they call that natural, or nature selects what species is able to do that. Well, I'm here to tell you the African can survive all changes as the universe goes from one cycle to another cycle. This is why when you research the ancients, all ancient, what's that show they got on the History Channel? Ancient aliens and all that stuff that they talk about now. When you research ancient cultures, you see that all of them are focused on studying the star systems, different star constellations.
Yeah, so they made ancient clock systems and
everybody,
cycles.
Everyone was studying the cycles. Everyone was studying these changing cycles. The Mayan calendar. You got the Yuga thing of India. We have the Greeks were even studying this stuff. All ancient cultures knew about the changing cycles. The secret societies that's ruling know about the changing cycles. That's why they keep the public ignorant. And that goes into anyone who wants to get more information about that with us, read our whole series we put out called The Book of Leviathan. Talks about it. We've been talking about, the master teacher's been explaining this now for the last, again,
50 plus years.
Half a century, exactly. Explaining what the cycle changes are. Right? That's why we said the devil's rule was up in the year 2000. His cycle is up. We're now in the sun cycle. And so we're moving from being materialistic, physical beings, back into being mental beings, which is why our doctrines always was teaching about the resurrection. What was the resurrection was about? The resurrection was about taking that which is solid and transforming it back into a liquid, which will eventually transform back into a gas.
We mean that physically?
We mean that physically. Solid like ice has the ability to transform into a liquid called water. and over time can transform into a gas we call water vapor. That was the mission of the master teacher. In fact, we'll play that clip from the CD called Who and What Are You? He explains that point exactly in that CD. Listen to him.
But the other thing was, if you are spiritual being, then what is your purpose here?
Mine?
Yeah, yours and any other.
Well, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher who come to get my students and prepare y'all for the war. We've had several wars against Azazel's people before, and we've won. And every time they went somewhere else and colonized. Now they've colonized here and they've gotten you. I've got to come and separate you from them and turn you back into spiritual people so we can conquer him, which is whom y'all call Satan. And prepare y'all to go back to Malakut. Malakut, what you say? Now, what is that? There's three domains, and then there's lower and above. Nefsut, Malakut, and Lahut going up. Nefsut is the abode of Humain, which is what y'all are, the ones on earth. Malakut is the abode of Malaik, angelic beings, as you call them. And Lahut is the throne of the omnipotent with the seven veils. You follow?
Okay.
Solid, liquid, and gas.
Okay.
You're in solid. The angels are in liquid, and the Almighty is in a form of gas. All right? Now the liquid can become vaporized into gas or hardened into a solid. Now I'm here to turn the solid back into a liquid, and then back into a gas. You follow? But they're so intermingled with the mortals here, it's harder to find who's who anymore. They're so well trained to act like the devil and live like him and want like him and love like him and lust like him, and it's hard to find the good ones from the bad ones now. It's quite a confusing job because you meet people, you think they're spiritual beings, you start teaching them, and they're really physical, nothing but physical, total physical, and it becomes bewildering.
How would I know for myself?
You do know it from yourself. You already know if you're a spiritual being because you're not content here. When you look up at the sky, you get despair. When they discuss UFOs, it doesn't frighten you. You want to be picked up by them. It's a difference. Other people say, not me, I'm not going to no fly football. Then there's another people that say, why don't I see them? You even look up at night out your window and say, why can't I see one? When I've taken the congregation from this community, I said, you want me to prove you that they exist? I took hundreds of them to the mountains and said, now watch, they're going to come from that direction. And I called them and they came. And they hovered above them. They saw with their own eyes. But they can call anybody crazy if they want. As long as I got company in this insanity, I feel good. But they saw with their own eyes the ship, and I told them what to chant, and they chanted, and the ship came close, beamed light, and took off. I said, those people are waiting to take you. And that was it. That's my job. And you have got to accept it before he realizes how dangerous I am, and then I'll have to leave. And many times as we're sent to you, you either turn us into gods or you call us prophets. You've got all kind of crazy names you make up because the men here cannot follow another what appears to be mortal without making him some type of a deity. Because they can't see it themselves. I'm a man too, so he must be God. Instead of just seeing themselves as students, or neophytes as you would have it, learning they have to turn you into a god or something. Or we would be gods compared to what the powers that you once had and that we have now. We would be gods compared to that, but you have the same power dormant. The same way your fingers there can play a piano. Right? Now, everybody's changed. But everybody has the ability to, who has working fingers to play the piano. Only a piano player knows that though. And they say, well, anybody can play this thing. You only know that as a piano player, though. You understand what I'm saying?
So now, you guys listen to the master teacher break that down. That's the goal. That's always been the goal. Is learning to, what we say, turn yourself inside out. What does that mean? What's that? John chapter
3? Being born again.
John chapter 1, verse 4.
Okay.
John chapter 1, verse 4. It says, I'll read it. In him was life, right? In him was life. And the life was the light of men. So the life of man is this light. What is this light? Ether, people. That's the light they're talking about. It's your ether. The ether is what gives you your life, called spirit. You with me? And then it says, and the light, which is ether, shineth in the darkness. What is the darkness? Your mind, your consciousness. It shines in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. You're not able to comprehend that you live based on this ether energy that's activating you. That's what you're ignorant to, that you you are a living spirit.
So we're saying our body and all of existence depends on and survives on ether. But we're not in a position where we comprehend and are properly processing this.
You're not able to comprehend that you function off of this ether energy. That's the life force. That's what gives you existence. And that's what makes you a mortal. A mortal is ignorant to their life force, their actual existence. Once you become knowledgeable of who and what you are again, right? Then you'll be able to do things when you hear people be able to go out of body. Then you will inherit higher, what we call higher senses.
Sensory perception.
Right. Your body, right now, the human being has 5 major senses, they say, right? Which is see, hear, taste, touch, smell. But you actually have dormant senses. Well, you also, thinking is a sense. Let me just say that. Thinking, they don't add that. That's an actual sense, okay? So you have other senses. In fact, you know what? Scientists now actually are identifying more senses that the human being that they haven't been cataloging as senses. So you have much more. And I'm here to tell you, you have telepathy as a sense, psychometry as a sense, intuition as a sense, clairvoyance as a sense, telekinesis as a sense, and the list goes on. But it's lying dormant. Why? Because you don't comprehend the light essence, the spirit essence that gives you your existence.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. My name is Russell Targ, and I'm a physicist. And it's my great pleasure to tell you about the remarkable work we did at Stanford Research Institute investigating psychic abilities. We did that for the CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, NASA, and many, many other intelligence agencies, part of the U.S. government intelligence system. I got into all this as a childhood magician, standing on the stage in New York doing mental magic. And I had the experience from time to time of having a direct perception of something in the life stream of the person whose mind I was pretending to read, or whose fortune I was pretending to tell. So I was not a real psychic. I was just a kid doing magic. But I've now talked to people like Kreskin and Melbourne Christopher, and they said, oh yes, every professional magician knows that from time to time you're given some material, and you can then supplement your magic trick with whatever ESP comes to you. And there are many magicians who do that, as we know. But I was not doing magic for the CIA, because as we know, the CIA is not easily amused, and we were trying to do the real thing for them. The work we did at SRI involved things like finding a downed Russian airplane in North Africa with code books on it, locating a kidnapped American general in northern Italy, looking into a Soviet weapons factory in Soviet Siberia, describing the construction of a huge Soviet submarine in northern Russia. And we even looked at on a Chinese atomic bomb test 3 days before it was scheduled to go off and described correctly that it was going to fail. So we did quite a lot of useful things for the government during our 23-year program. The ability we're talking about is a natural psychic ability that we all have, in spite of what you may have heard to the contrary. People can quiet their mind and describe and experience what's happening in a distant place or in the future. And this has been talked about for thousands of years. Buddhists have a vast lore about what this is and how to do it and why it's desirable. And I'll try and talk about that later. The ability allows you to quiet your mind and describe and experience what's happening in the future. And you can do that independent of the distance. The most interesting thing that we found as physicists is that it's no harder to describe what's happening in Soviet Siberia 6,000 miles away than it is for you to describe the funny object I have in my pocket. 6,000 miles away does not decrease the accuracy or the reliability as compared with something nearby. Looking into the distance is no harder than looking at a contemporaneous event, and that's why this is called a non-local perception. Not quantum mechanical particularly. It pertains to the fact that we live in a non-local space-time described as scientifically most recently by Schrödinger in the 1920s and then proved in the 1970s and 1980s. So the idea of non-local connections is not New Age. This is accepted in the physical community. The hottest topic in modern physics is exploring non-locality. It was described originally by the Buddhists 2,000 years ago, but modern physics has finally caught up.
We're ignorant to this science. And that's what this information is all about. So, once you comprehend the SMAT circle, and you can get a comprehensive concept of what the SMAT circle was about, then a lot of the things that we've been teaching in our doctrine will become clear. Think of the SMAT circle like a black print for explaining a lot of the principles that the master teacher has been teaching for the last 50 years. That's why he was so misunderstood, like when we were Ansars, back from 1970 up into 1990 for 20 some odd years. And they wrote that book about us, Ansar cult, calling us, y'all not no Muslims, y'all not no Muslims. And it's like, because no one was comprehending how advanced our doctrine was. We was teaching an advanced doctrine in its infancy when we was in the school of Islam, as opposed to where we are now in the school of Wusabat. In the school of Wusabat, we're acknowledging we come directly from these sons. Right?
That's right.
That we are part of a universal community of existence. That it's not just us that exists. And your goal, the ultimate goal of all students of Wusabat, is to get back to what it talks about in the Bible, where Adam and Eve used to walk and talk with God. And you lost that ability. And this is what the ultimate goal is, to get back to walking and talking with God. And who is God? In that story, God is nothing but, in today's terminology, what we call an extraterrestrial. Meaning that we had an extraterrestrial existence. We had a universal existence. In fact, we were a part of a universal community of existence. No different than what you people are seeing right now on Star Wars and Star Trek and now the Avengers. Right? They're now introducing the public more and more to, one, a universal existence, and two, dormant abilities within a human being. Like every movie and every show now is pushing this.
Yeah.
That's a common theme they're pushing. That humans are raising their consciousness. Things are changing. Why is it changing? I'm telling you it's changing because the conditions in nature, the ether, that's why the planet is heating up. More sun energy means more ether energy. More ether energy means more mental capacity. So people's mental capacity is going to begin to increase. Okay? This is where we're at. This is where we're at. So, this is just part one, right? This is part 1.
Got 3 more to go.
It's a lot. The next one I said we're going to talk about 9 ether. What is exactly 9 ether? 9, it represents the mind. 6 represents sex. And 3 ether represents ghosts, that represents death. So each one is a different realm of existence. Each one is a different realm of existence. The realm of the mental, those who rule and make decisions based on the mind. The realm of sex, that is the beginning of what we call the evolutionary cycle. The realm of the animal kingdom, the realm of the zodiac, we call Nuwaupu, and the realm of the dead, which is where we are now, where you have a species that gets into power and they rule by death, the death force. That is the spirit power of the Caucasian. He rules by 2 things, death and deception. Death and deception. That's the key ingredients to their rulership. And so our next lectures will be detailed explaining those 3 principles. So with that, I want to thank everyone supporting us, right? Taking the time out to watch this lecture. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Become members of NoopooCC.com. And also, the master teacher, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, is innocent.
Peace and love, y'all. Spread the word.
Sun is shining, the weather is sweet.